People used to say we were one big happy family. From the outside, I guess it looked like that. Birthday cakes, shared chores, polite smiles at church. But inside that house, I was learning a quiet truth. Love isn't always evenly handed out. When Camila came to live with us, it was supposed to be temporary. Just a few months while her parents sorted things out. But before I knew it, she wasn't just staying. She was taking up space that used to be mine. They bought her new clothes, praised her grades, and called her such a bright girl, like I wasn't even standing there. I didn't say anything at first. I just watched. Watched how Mom started making Camila's favorite dinners. Watched how Dad lit up when she talked about her dreams. It wasn't even subtle. My science fair project got a "that's nice," while Camila's got framed. She started calling them aunt and uncle, but they didn't correct her when she switched to Mom and Dad. I still remember the first time she did that, the way Mom smiled, like she'd been waiting to hear it all along. And the final punch? College. We both got in, different schools, but we were both excited. Until the night they sat me down. No cake, no congratulations. Just a flat voice telling me they were going to help Camila with her tuition. She has more potential, they said. And me? I could get a job, take out loans, figure it out. I didn't cry, I didn't argue. I just nodded and started writing everything down, not on paper, but in the kind of memory that doesn't fade. I kept a smile on my face after that night, not because I was fine, I wasn't, but because I refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. While they were busy planning Camila's dorm room and posting her acceptance letter on the fridge like it was some family victory, I was filling out scholarship forms at midnight. I scrubbed floors at a local diner that summer. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. They never asked how I was doing. Honestly, I don't think they even noticed I was gone most nights. And Camila? She soaked it all in. Trips to visit campus, new laptop, glowing send-off. She'd toss me a smile once in a while, like she was sorry, but not sorry enough to step back. And maybe she believed the story they told her, that I was the strong one, the independent one, the one who didn't need help. It's funny how easy it is for people to justify neglect when they repackage it as admiration. But I didn't want admiration. I wanted fairness. I wanted to be seen. Still, I swallowed it. All of it. The favoritism, the silence, the way they turned me into a ghost in my own life. I became the girl who didn't ask for much, who didn't complain, who just kept moving. But inside, I was building something. Not out of anger, not yet, but out of a quiet determination. Every late shift, every sleepless night, every skipped meal. I told myself it would count for something. That one day, I'd look back, not to relive it, but to remember exactly why I left. There was this moment, a few days before Camila left for college, that still burned into my memory. I was coming home from work, apron still on, grease in my hair, and I heard laughter spilling from the kitchen. Camila was opening gifts, a new suitcase, noise-canceling headphones. A card with money tucked inside. My parents stood there beaming like they were sending their only child off to conquer the world. No one even looked up when I walked in. I slipped past them, went to my room, and shut the door as gently as I could, but it still felt like a scream. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, heart pounding, wondering how love could be so selective. I wasn't perfect, but I was present. I didn't shine as bright, maybe, but I stayed. And somehow, that counted for nothing. That was the first time I felt something close to resentment. Not hate exactly, just a deep, aching awareness that I was on my own. Entirely. And that nobody was coming to rescue me. Not even the people who were supposed to love me first. They said Camila had more potential, that she was going places. I didn't respond, didn't argue, but I started writing my story that day. Not for anyone else, just for me. Because if they weren't going to remember what I went through, I would. If they weren't going to honor me, I'd learn to honor myself. And as Camila drove off to the life they built for her, I stayed behind, quietly determined to build my own. No one held my hand through college. No care packages, no phone calls asking how classes were going. Just me. a part-time waitress by night, full-time student by day, trying to survive in a world I wasn't raised to handle alone. My alarm clock became my closest companion, going off before the sun every morning. I'd brew cheap coffee in a second-hand pot, throw my hair up, and brace for another day of juggling books, bills, and broken promises. It was exhausting, but somehow I found a rhythm. There's something strange about struggle. It sharpens you. You stop fantasizing and start solving. I learned how to stretch $20 into a week of meals, how to write essays on no sleep, how to cry in public without anyone noticing. And while Camila was switching majors and posting photos from music festivals her tuition paid for, I was collecting quiet victories. A professor's compliment, a scholarship approval, a paper returned with the words "excellent insight" underlined. I didn't post about it. I didn't have time. But each one felt like a stitch in the armor I was slowly building. I graduated with honors. No crowd, no flowers, just a cheap black gown and a heart that felt 20 pounds lighter. I walked across that stage like it was sacred ground, like I was rewriting history with every step. No one from my family came. I knew they wouldn't. Still, a part of me looked out into the sea of faces, hoping. And when I didn't see them, I smiled anyway. Because that day wasn't about who showed up. It was about who didn't give up. After graduation, I didn't throw a party. I got on a bus, one suitcase, a half-dead phone, and a quiet promise to myself I wasn't coming back. I found a tiny apartment in a city where no one knew my name, and I loved it that way. I started small, freelancing online, taking odd consulting jobs that paid just enough to cover rent and ramen. But slowly, the work grew. Clients recommended me. Companies started calling. I didn't have a fancy office or a logo, but I had something better, a reputation for showing up, doing the job, and doing it damn well. Meanwhile, through the occasional social media update or distant family rumor, I heard about Camila. She was struggling, switching jobs, couch hopping, defaulting on loans. I didn't smile at her misfortune. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt distance, a safe, necessary distance. Because life has a way of bringing everything full circle, and I was too busy moving forward to look back. I didn't call, didn't write. And for the first time, I felt completely in control of my own story. That control became a kind of peace. I'd walk to work early in the morning, past bakeries opening their doors, breathing in the smell of coffee and fresh bread. Simple things became sacred: grocery lists, clean sheets, quiet evenings. My world was small, but it was mine, built from scratch, paid for in full, and free of ghosts. No one asked how I got there. No one saw the bruises from the climb. But I did. And every morning I woke up, I reminded myself, this wasn't luck, it was earned. There were moments, rare, fleeting, when I wondered if they missed me. If my name ever came up at dinner, or if they passed my photo in an old album and paused. But I never reached out to find out. The silence between us became its own kind of closure. They had made their choices. And so had I. Every time I got a new client, every time someone trusted me with their vision, I felt something inside me settle. I wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. I was just living. Fully, freely, and on my own terms. My success wasn't loud. It wasn't flashy or posted online for likes and applause. It was quiet and steady, a kind of success that feels like breathing after holding it in for too long. I learned how to decorate a home without asking for opinions. I made playlists for rainy days. I celebrated my own wins: dinner out, a new blazer, a weekend trip by train. It might not sound like much to some people, but to me, it was everything I never had growing up: choice, ownership, joy without strings. They never checked in on me, not once. No missed calls, no surprise letters. And after a while, I stopped expecting them to. I stopped rehearsing imaginary conversations. I stopped wondering what they'd say if they saw me now. I moved forward, not with bitterness, but with purpose. Because the truth is, I didn't need them to cheer me on. I had already learned how to clap for myself. It started with a message, one of those vague, formal ones that somehow still drips with desperation. Please call when you can. It's urgent. No name, no punctuation, just trembling between the lines. I almost deleted it, but curiosity, or maybe instinct, made me pause. I hadn't heard from them in years. Not a holiday greeting, not a birthday text, just silence. And now, out of nowhere, they wanted something. I already knew. Before I even picked up the phone, I knew. Their business had collapsed. Years of risky ventures, get-rich-quick ideas, and ignoring advice had finally caught up. Bankruptcy, debt, public humiliation. I could picture the scene, unpaid bills stacking up on the kitchen counter, hushed arguments late at night, the air thick with fear. They'd always acted like they were untouchable, like life would never dare humble them. But now, here they were, humbled, broke, and crawling back to the daughter they once abandoned. They didn't come to me first, of course. No, they went to Camila, the golden girl, the one they bet everything on. But Camila had nothing left. Years of bouncing between majors turned into years of bouncing between jobs. She was living paycheck to paycheck, drowning in loans, still waiting for the world to hand her a miracle. When they realized their investment had dried up, they finally turned to me, the backup plan they never believed in. The second message was longer and worse. We gave you life, Gianna. You owe us. You have to save us. I stared at those words for a long time, not because they hurt, that sting had long since faded, but because of the sheer audacity. After all these years, after everything they ignored, dismissed, or handed to someone else, they still thought I owed them something. Like I was some emergency fund waiting in the wings. Like I hadn't built every inch of my life without a dime from them. I didn't respond right away. I went for a walk instead. The kind of walk where your feet move, but your mind just sprints. I passed quiet cafes, parents pushing strollers, people sipping lattes like the world wasn't falling apart for someone else. And I thought, not once, not ever, had they walked with me. Not through the cold nights, not through the hunger, not through the lonely holidays where I lit a candle just to feel a little warmth. And now they wanted to be part of my life again, because it was finally worth something to them. By the time I got home, I knew my answer. Not from anger, not even from pride, but from clarity. I didn't owe them salvation. They had been my beginning, yes, but I was the one who did all the heavy lifting after they let go. I opened the message one last time, read it slowly. Then I laughed, a full, stunned, slightly bitter laugh that startled even me, because sometimes the only response to entitlement is knowing you've outgrown it. I didn't block them. I didn't reply either. Some silences speak louder than any argument. And I figured, after all this time, maybe they'd finally listen. Maybe they'd sit in the quiet they left behind and realize just how long it had been since they last asked how I was doing. Not what I could give them. Not what they needed. Just how I was. But that kind of reflection requires humility. And from what I could tell, they still hadn't learned how to say, "We were wrong." I imagined their faces when Camila told them she couldn't help. The panic. The shame. The moment they realized the daughter they invested in had nothing to show for it, and the one they ignored was the only one who could actually save them. But I wasn't interested in poetic justice. I wasn't chasing revenge. This wasn't a movie. This was my real, hard-earned, fiercely protected life. And I wasn't handing it over for an apology that never came. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat by the window. The city lights blinked like quiet confessions. I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not because they were suffering, but because their suffering wasn't mine to fix. For the first time, I wasn't the forgotten daughter or the backup plan. I was just me. And that was finally enough. I agreed to meet, not because I missed them, and definitely not because I felt guilty. I agreed because I needed to look them in the eye. I needed them to see what they'd left behind, and what I'd become without them. We met at my office. Neutral ground, professional, controlled. I wore confidence like armor that day. A tailored suit, subtle heels, hair pinned back just right. My assistant offered them water while they sat awkwardly on the edge of the leather chairs, taking in the success they had nothing to do with. When I walked in, their eyes widened. It was subtle, just enough to catch the surprise before they masked it. I sat down across from them, not a hug, not a hello, just silence. They started with small talk, but I didn't bite. And when they finally got to the point, the favor, the plea, the financial lifeline, I waited, let the words hang in the air. Then I said it, calm and clear. You gave me life, and then handed it to someone else. The room went still. My mother blinked like she hadn't expected me to speak so plainly. My father looked down, like maybe the carpet could explain where things went wrong. They tried again, this time softer, more emotional. We didn't know. We didn't mean to. But meaning and memory aren't the same thing. And I remembered everything. Not with anger, but with sharp, unforgiving detail. Every ignored effort, every birthday skipped, every time Camila got what I earned. They cried. Real tears, or at least tears that looked real. Maybe they believed they were sorry. Maybe they just hated being on the other side of rejection. They reached for every tool they once used to control the room. Guilt, nostalgia, even flattery. You've become so strong, Gianna. We're proud of you. I almost laughed at that. Proud? Of what? The silence they left me in? The resilience they forced me to build alone? It was like watching strangers try to wear familiar faces. Nothing fit anymore. I kept my voice steady, my hands folded neatly in my lap. I told them I wasn't angry, because I wasn't. I'd passed anger years ago. What I felt now was more dangerous to them, detachment. They no longer had access to my heart. No key, no map. They had given that up the moment they chose to pour everything into Camila and left me to patch up the cracks in my life with grit and sleepless nights. I wasn't here to mend things. I was here to mark the end of pretending. My mother whispered something about family, about how blood is thicker. I looked her straight in the eye and said, "Family isn't just who raises you. It's who shows up when it matters." And then I stood, not to be dramatic, just done, fully, finally done. They begged a little more, offered words I once would have killed to hear, but it was too late. They'd spent years investing in someone else's future. I was just the return they didn't expect, and would never receive. As I walked them to the door, the silence between us felt heavier than it ever had before. Not cruel, just final. They didn't know what to say anymore, and I wasn't about to help them find the words. My father paused, hand resting on the doorknob like he was waiting for some last-minute miracle, for me to soften, to change my mind, to throw them a lifeline out of habit. But that version of me didn't exist anymore. She'd been rewritten, replaced by a woman who built everything from nothing, and who owed no one a damn thing. When the door shut behind them, I didn't cry. I didn't crumble. I just stood there for a moment, staring at the quiet hallway, letting the peace of that goodbye settle into my bones. It was the kind of closure I never thought I'd get, not because they gave it to me, but because I took it. On my own terms. Without yelling, without rage, just truth, and a spine I'd learned to stand tall on. I didn't need their love anymore. I had earned my own. They walked away with empty hands. And I walked back to my desk with a full spine, a calm heart, and a life that belonged completely to me. Not borrowed, not gifted, not inherited. Just mine. The chapter they never helped me write, but that I'd signed with my own name, bold and unmistakable. The story didn't end with that meeting. It rarely does. Word got around, fast. Family whispers, cousin texts, passive-aggressive comments on old photos. The narrative they spun was predictable, that I'd turned my back on the people who raised me, that success had made me cold, ungrateful. They called me heartless for saying no. But what they didn't talk about, what no one ever talks about, is what it feels like to be forgotten in your own home and then expected to play hero years later. At first, I stayed silent. Let them talk. Let them turn me into the villain in the version of the story that made them feel better. But after a while, I stopped caring altogether. Their version didn't matter anymore, because while they were gossiping, I was building something real, something bigger than just my own name. I started funding scholarships for girls like me, girls who'd been overlooked, dismissed, told they had to figure it out alone. And I didn't do it for credit. I did it because I remembered what it felt like to sit in the dark with no help coming. Each application I read felt like a mirror. Stories of struggle, strength, survival. I saw pieces of myself in all of them. And for once, I had the power to say, "You're not alone." I did it quietly, anonymously. No press releases, no photo ops, just action, just healing. Not by fixing the past, but by making sure someone else's future looked a little brighter. And then one day, her name showed up. Camila's daughter, a teenager with big eyes, high grades, and a story full of financial struggle and parental absence. I stared at the application for a long time. Not because I was unsure, I wasn't, but because life has a way of writing its own punchlines. Her essay wasn't bitter, it was honest. She talked about wanting to study social work to help kids like her. She talked about growing up with instability, about wanting more. There was no mention of Camila, just silence where a mother's presence should have been. The committee had no idea who she was to me. To them, she was just another applicant. To me, she was the unintended echo of a decision made long ago, the ripple effect of choosing the wrong daughter. But I didn't pause out of spite. I paused because I felt something unexpected. Not revenge, not satisfaction, just clarity. Camila had given her daughter what she'd been given, nothing but an empty promise and a name to carry. And now, here was this young girl, trying to build a future from the same broken pieces I once held. I approved the scholarship, no notes, no conditions. Just a silent signature that would cover her tuition, her housing, her books. I didn't want her to know it came from me. She didn't need to carry that weight. This wasn't about debt or redemption. It was about doing what my parents never did, choosing to believe in someone without needing anything back. And in that quiet moment, I felt something shift inside me. Something like peace, and something like freedom. I never told anyone. Not friends, not colleagues, not even the foundation board. It was one of those moments meant to stay unspoken, not because it was a secret, but because it didn't need to be loud to be powerful. Some things are more sacred in silence. I went on with my life, meetings, trips, late-night takeout, and early morning walks. But inside me, something had settled. Not closure exactly, but a quiet knowing. I had become everything they said I couldn't, and I'd done it on my own terms. Camila never reached out. Maybe she never found out. Maybe she did and didn't know what to say. Either way, it didn't matter. I wasn't waiting for gratitude. That's the thing no one tells you. Healing doesn't always come wrapped in thank yous. Sometimes it comes in the form of letting go, of giving without needing applause, of rising without dragging anyone down. And that was the life I'd chosen. Not a life fueled by spite, but one led by strength. A life that refused to repeat the damage that shaped it. They gave me nothing, not a map. Not support, not even kindness when it counted. But I gave the world everything I had, just not to them. And somehow, in the middle of all that loss, I found my way. I found my voice. I found myself. And maybe, just maybe, that was the real story all along.